What's up, guys? It's Jack here and welcome back to a brand new video. Today, I was a little stumped on what videos I should do. Not much in the news, but I saw in the comment section someone choose a video that I should do, and I decided to do it. I'm gonna put it on the screen. I forgot your name at the top of my head. Thank you guys for suggesting videos. If you guys have any other video suggestions, I'll do them. Q&A is tomorrow, so make sure you guys leave questions. This is your last chance to leave any questions before tomorrow, and then I'll do the Q&A. Guys, click the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, comment below, leave a like, all of that stuff, and let's just get into this video. Obviously, you can see from the title to talk about who is the best fighter in each weight class from 135 to heavyweight, because 125 is still kind of new, and the women's division I kind of found too hard. We're going to talk about the best fighter of each of those weight classes that never won a championship ever in their career in the UFC. So I don't want to waste any more of your time. You guys already know what to do. Now let's get into this. Starting with 135 bantamweight. Obviously, there's a lot of good contenders, and I found this one to be probably the most challenging out of all the weight classes to choose, and maybe this might be some recency bias. I'm going to choose Corey Sandhagen. Corey Sandhagen, as you guys know, is one of my favorite fighters on the current UFC roster. It was a little hard because, yes, there are great bantamweight, but I found a lot of them to be champions. A lot of the older guys. I just think Corey Sandhagen is one of those guys that is destined to become a UFC champion. I would find it hard to believe that he doesn't. Right now, I think he's in a little bit of a tough spot politically because, yes, he's lost to Jan. Yes, he's lost to Aljamain. He is still a top dude, and I think we're going to see it with the Marlon Vera fight. I think he's going to really showcase his skill. He's in a tough spot also because, look, you have Sean O'Malley in the mix. You have Petr Yan and Merab Dvalishvili coming up. We have Davison Figueiredo coming to bantamweight. There's so many good matchups for the champion, and it kind of leaves Corey Sandhagen out of the equation. So it is tough for him, and I don't think he'll be the UFC champion this year just because of all the politics, but he is definitely up there in the skill department. Another thing I like about Corey Sandhagen is I find every time he comes in, he's improving. I mean, you saw with the Aljamain fight, you saw that he got submitted. He really worked on his jiu-jitsu for the TJ fight and the Yan fight, and then after that fight, he took a year off and learned, hey, maybe I gotta mix in some wrestling, confuse my opponents. And you saw with the Song Yadong fight, now he's going for takedowns. He trains with guys like Ryan Hall to really improve his jiu-jitsu, and he really is looking to improve his full mixed martial arts game. So that's why I think he's definitely the best that's never won a championship. However, I do think that he will win a championship at some point. Next up, we're up to featherweight, and this one might be a little controversial, and I don't know how you guys are going to take it. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. I'm going with Chad Mendes. Chad Mendes in his prime. The guy fought for the title 3 times, I believe. He fought Jose Aldo twice. He fought Conor McGregor for an interim title. By the way, interim titles don't count in this video, so we're talking about real championships. Chad Mendes in his prime was a guy that, people even thought that he was going to give Conor McGregor problems, and in my opinion, he might have given him some problems if he didn't take that fight on short notice and he had more of a training camp. But the guy is powerful. We see even to this day, he knocks out guys in bare knuckle boxing. He was undefeated, I think, up until he fought Jose Aldo, and he genuinely was one of those guys that mixed in the wrestling, and he's powerful. He was an explosive guy, and he never won a championship. And maybe if things were a little bit different, if other people were champions, maybe if Jose Aldo wasn't the greatest of all time and then Conor McGregor came in, if Jose Aldo wasn't so dominant during that time, I think, and he wasn't the champion, I think we could have seen Chad Mendes become the UFC champion, but a lot of these things are timing, and it wasn't his time. All right, next up, we're talking about the lightweight division, and this one was probably the easiest for me. Obviously, I think you guys could already guess. We're talking Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier, surprisingly, has never won a UFC championship as a lightweight, despite being, in my opinion, up there with one of the greatest lightweights of all time. He has, I think, he definitely has the most knockouts in UFC lightweight history, and I think he has the most wins now in UFC lightweight history. The guy has experience. The guy has fought the best of the best. He's beaten Conor McGregor, Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler, Bobby Green, you name it. The guy has fought the best of the best repeatedly. He won the interim title. He won against Max Holloway in a very entertaining fight. Obviously, he came up short against Charles Oliveira and Khabib. He also has amazing jiu-jitsu, really good hands. Obviously, in my opinion, one of the best boxers, if not the best boxer in the UFC. And in my opinion, I think Dustin Poirier is just like one of those guys, and I think he might not ever win a UFC championship. So I'm going to go Dustin Poirier. I think that he's definitely the best. I think a lot of people would agree on that. Now, 170 was hard as well. I wanted to make sure, look at the older guys, look at the newer guys, and make sure I wasn't playing into recency bias, but I'm going with Colby Covington. Colby is a guy, in my opinion, that had 2 close fights with one of the greatest welterweights of all time, Kamaru Usman, and his matchup is just difficult for anybody at any given time. I mean, he has really good cardio, will wrestle you, will shoot like 3 to 4 takedowns per round. He will keep shooting on you even if you get up, and he just doesn't get tired. He increases the volume as the fight goes on, and that's hard for anybody to deal with. Wrestling has high wrestling IQ also, not just skill, but he also has high wrestling IQ. He also is now starting to put the hands together. He's really working on his stand-up, working on his defense, especially after that first Kamaru Usman fight. And in my opinion, unpopular unpopular opinion, but I thought Colby won that rematch with Usman. I thought he won 3, 4, and 5. I could see it though going to Usman because I've scored it both ways before watching the fight, so I always change my mind. So I don't blame the decision there. And in the first fight, there certainly is an argument that that fight got stopped too early, and one of the judges did have Colby winning. Either way, I think Colby is a stylistic nightmare for a lot of guys, and I think that no matter what time and place, even, you know, George St. Pierre, I'm not saying George St. Pierre would lose, but that's still a difficult matchup. Colby is a difficult matchup for anybody. And if he didn't get injured and fought Tyron Woodley when he had the interim belt, we saw how the fight between Colby and Tyron went. He could have been the UFC champion if injury didn't happen. You know, you never know though. All right, next we're talking about the middleweight division. And this one was a hard one because I did have this one in mind the whole time, but I was like, do I really want to, let me look for a better option. I had Yoel Romero kind of in the mix because Yoel Romero did have some impressive performances against Robert Whittaker. Also, a lot of people say that he beat Israel Adesanya, so I did consider him. I overall went with the guy that was so close to beating Anderson Silva. We're talking about Chael Sonnen. And Chael Sonnen in his prime, he was never a guy that had this like big win streak or anything like that, so that's why I kind of hesitated on picking him. But when you look at the performance of Anderson in the ground and pound, and in my opinion in the second fight, Chael was doing pretty well, especially early on, and I think that Anderson really just caught him with the shot. You know, I don't know if we necessarily have the answer on who was the better fighter at that time. Chael did beat a lot of guys. He beat Michael Bisping, who was a champion, and Chael's wrestling is very good. I mean, Chael really was able to put the pressure on Anderson Silva and really had him in probably the most difficult position in his prime. So he definitely was his biggest opposition there, was definitely his biggest rival, and obviously his mic skills were just extremely through the roof. So I'm gonna pick Chael Sonnen as the best 185. Now 205 was another difficult one, but I overall went through a one that gave John Jones and Daniel Cormier problems. I considered Rumble Johnson, so I'm going with Alexander Gustafsson. Now Alexander Gustafsson obviously had 2 wars with John Jones and Daniel Cormier. He had, well, with each of them, not two together, but he had a war with John Jones and a war with Daniel Cormier. And I just think the boxing of Alexander Gustafsson is like unmatched in that division. He was definitely one of the top guys that never won a championship, of course, but he's also the first guy to ever take down John Jones. He showed versatility in that fight. He put John Jones in a dangerous place, and probably the most dangerous place John Jones has ever been in his career. I mean, yes, Dominic Reyes, in my opinion, did beat John Jones, but you didn't see the beatdown that Alexander Gustafsson gave John Jones in a few of those moments. And of course, the fight with DC was also another banger. As of late, yes, Alexander Gustafsson has been not doing so well. He just got knocked out last year in the first round, but in his prime, he definitely was a problem. Now, who is the best heavyweight that never won a UFC championship? And this one is pretty obvious. I think this is probably the most famous one. I'm going Fedor Emelianenko. Fedor obviously is a guy that was supposed to fight for a championship in the UFC, but Dana White never was able to get a deal done with him. Now, obviously, look, Fedor never fought for the UFC, so it's a little bit hard to judge, like, hey, how does he stand up against those UFC guys? Because we see, especially with someone like, hey, like Ben Askren, who was undefeated before coming to the UFC, that obviously going to the UFC is a little bit of a different situation, right? And although, yes, I know that there's different circumstances with Ben Askren in terms of the age and everything like that, my point still stands. Look, it's a different ballgame when you're hanging with the top of the top, when you're exposing yourself to a whole new fan base. All these factors get added up. With a record of like 40 wins and like 6 or 5 losses or something like that, it's incredible. He's 43 and fighting for a title next month. He's 40, I think he's older than 43. I think he's like 46 or something. He is like almost as old as Anderson was when he boxed Jake. He is fighting for a Bellator title against Ryan Bader in a rematch. He obviously lost the last one, and he was a guy that people wanted him to fight Brock Lesnar or even Cain Velasquez. A lot of these top guys never got to fight them, but he's proficient in the mixed martial arts of Sambo, and we've seen how Habib and Islam and all of those guys have done with a proficiency in Sambo, so it's only safe to assume that he was definitely one of the best, and maybe would have caused a lot of problems for a guy like Brock Lesnar, a guy like Cain Velasquez, a guy like, you know, Junior Dos Santos, a lot of those guys that were champions at the time. But that is going to conclude my list. You know, let me know who you guys got. Let me know who you guys think. Let me know if you thought some of my choices were ridiculous. I think I'll get a few backlashes on, you know, some of the Colby or Corey Sandhagen picks because of recency bias, and I understand that, but a lot of these are kind of hard to judge. Anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like if you did, and I'll see you guys in the next one.